Welcome to my interim research summary of ongoing work towards the 2011 NATO intervention in the Libyan Civil War case study. NATO's military intervention in Libya, authorized by United Nations Security Council Resolution 1973, with the mission to protect the civilian population of Libya engaged in peaceful protest against the regime, achieved overall success in its humanitarian mission by minimizing collateral damage to civilians, preventing a potentially catastrophic humanitarian crisis from escalating, and in providing regime opposition forces the necessary breathing space to develop capacities to remove the regime from power. NATO also demonstrated its continued relevance and dominance as a vital source of stability, with the unique capacity and political cohesiveness to quickly respond and resolve rapidly time-sensitive conflicts around the globe, threatening international peace and stability. Additionally, NATO performed its intervention in partnership with key regional actors, illustrating the alliance's increasingly global leadership role. Intervention in Libya is a model for future humanitarian and peacekeeping operations to build upon, and its success further legitimizes important international norms regarding human rights such as the responsibility to protect, which was established by United Nations unanimous agreement at the 2005 World Summit. The Libyan intervention demonstrated how a humanitarian intervention can be successfully executed at a relatively low financial cost and with minimal collateral damage. But as in Afghanistan, Iraq, and potentially Syria, the operational planning and coordination excelled in achieving its short-term objectives, and generally neglected long-term ones. Post-conflict stability planning was not given genuine consideration during the 7-month conflict, and the current climate of conflict in Libya's post-Gaddafi area threatens to reverse NATO's successes, as new humanitarian crises have and continue to emerge in Libya, where no legitimate government has been able to fill the power vacuum left in the former regime's wake. While exemplary multinational coordination and operational planning deserves praise and replication in future interventions, long-term planning and commitment considerations in regards to post-conflict peace and stability must become a second priority of humanitarian interventions, especially when regime change is likely to occur. Neglecting long-term objectives will likely reverse successful outcomes, as history and current conflicts have already begun to demonstrate. In developing my thesis, it was essential to thoroughly examine the background information surrounding the Libyan Civil War, the political debates over intervention, and both the coalition's and NATO's operational planning and coordination during the conflict. Two key sources were especially useful in this matter, providing comprehensive descriptions of both Operation Odyssey Dawn and Unified Protector's multinational planning and coordination during the crisis. These sources also revealed shortcomings and lessons to improve upon in future operations. Of primary importance was RAND Corporation's federally funded research project on air power. Chapter 2 of this report provided the most useful information in regards to providing a strategic political overview of the intervention, explaining in detail every aspect of the alliance's planning, coordination, command and control structure, targeting, and political development. Another key source, which was extremely helpful in providing similar information, but exclusively on the coalition of the willing aspect of the intervention, which occurred prior to NATO's assumption of operational command during Operation Odyssey Dawn. The African Bulletin Research Journal provided the bulk of this aspect of my research. After I felt comfortable with my comprehension of the intervention's operational background, I focused my research on the actions precipitating an international response to Libya's humanitarian crisis, the legality and justification for intervention, and existing debates surrounding the legality of the military intervention itself. The online United Nations Security Council Resolution Archive provided me with both the copies of the two security resolutions which authorized the intervention, 1970 and 1973. An article by Chris Cox, published within the Yearbook of International Humanitarian Law, titled Operation Unified Protector and the Protection of Civilians, provided me with an objective overview of the legal framework in which the intervention was authorized that would help me reach my conclusions in regards to whether or not NATO's intervention was legitimately conducted and successful in its mission to protect civilians. At this point in my research, I narrowed my focus to debates surrounding the legality and success of the intervention in order to further develop my thesis. Both opponents and proponents of NATO's operations raised valid concerns that helped me reach my conclusions, that NATO was successful in its mission to protect civilians and was justified in doing so. However, I also found areas that would require further research in order to better support my position, such as whether or not waiting for the International Criminal Court to report on alleged crimes against humanity to reach the UN before initiating military intervention can be justified as legal, or if privileged intelligence is sufficient to warrant such action in the case of an imminent threat to civilians. Additionally, many opponents claim that Libyan protesters were in fact armed rather than peaceful and had initiated the conflict rather than the regime. Evidence supporting these claims is questionable, but warrants further research. Journal articles of particular help included The New Politics of Protection by Alex Bellamy, A Model Humanitarian Intervention by Alex Cooperman, Nor's The Libyan Crisis in UNSR 1973, Does Responsibility to Protect Matter by Luke Glanville, and The Right Way to Run an Intervention by Ivo Dalder and James Stavridis. In finalizing my research thesis and determining further research needs, I focused on information that could shed light on the situation in Libya following NATO's intervention and the death of Gaddafi. Although my sources are limited to 2 journal articles and are only preliminary findings, they were informative and led me to reach my conclusion and final aspect of my thesis, that inadequate post-conflict stability considerations were given throughout the intervention's 2 operations, despite the fact that regime change was desired from the start and a very likely reality during operations. 2 sources that provided detailed accounts of the climate in Libya since 2011 to the present reveal unsettling developments threatening to reverse the successes enjoyed during the intervention. These include Libya since 2011, Political Transformation and Violence by Hans-Peter Mates, and Libya and the Future of Liberal Intervention by Chris Chivvis. Further research will be required to back up my assertions, especially regarding considerations given during the intervention to facilitate a peaceful transitional government in Libya amongst rebel forces. Questions to consider and guide future research include whether or not the alliance gathered intelligence on the numerous factions within the rebel groups, especially those who may have exhibited radical Islamist or criminal background tendencies, what prevented adequate planning for post-conflict stability, and how does the currently deteriorating humanitarian situation in Libya affect the prospects of future interventions as a viable option. I look forward to completing my research and the new inevitable questions that will present themselves. Thank you for listening and have an excellent week.